So I know that you're probably well aware we have Minnesota Reading Corps at Kennedy Elementary School and have had that for a couple of years. And we were fortunate enough to be able to participate with Minnesota Reading Corps with preschool literacy tutors at our site this year. So our preschool tutors, we have a community corps member who is full-time, and community corps means they are not employed by the school district. They are a literacy tutor directly with Minnesota Reading Corps, and then we have a professional corps member. So Jennifer Peters, who took over my position at Cardinal Kids, took on the role of learning and becoming a literacy tutor for Minnesota Reading Corps in addition to her position at Cardinal Kids. So we have two literacy tutors working with our preschool programs, and they are in, let's see, 4 classrooms?
Yes.
4 classrooms is what they work with. And so what they do is they create literacy-rich environments, and they focus on the big 5 emergency literacy skills. And those are alphabetic knowledge, book and print concepts, phonological awareness, oral language and conversation, and vocabulary and meaning. And then they collect data, benchmarks in the fall, and they tailor interventions for kids who are not on target to reach those spring goals. And those spring goals are really what Minnesota Reading Corps, the preschool part of Minnesota Reading Corps, has sort of deemed as a good place to be when you enter kindergarten. So,
and again, it's that RTI model that's currently being used.
Yep.
And I would just add, Ann, that Michelle White is our community member at Jefferson. So she's helping the programming at Jefferson.
So it's been a really, really interesting thing for us to have Minnesota Reading Corps in a couple of our classrooms. It's not in all of our classrooms, but those teachers have really picked up on a lot of the things that are happening in the Minnesota Reading Corps that the tutor is doing. What would be considered Tier 1, which is general instruction that the whole class is a part of. And those things are sort of rolling down the hallway, and you hear them happening in all sorts of places now, as opposed to just the tutor who's been highly trained to do that job. And so the impact has been really great for us in building. So Kate Horst, who's the kind of the head of this Minnesota Reading Corps and the author of Seeds of Early Literacy, was kind of inspired by research that was done by Hart and Risley. And what Hart and Risley had done is they spent about 2.5 years intensely observing the language of 42 families in Kansas City. And they looked at household languages in 3 different settings: professional families, working class families, and welfare families. And what they found out after hour-long observations over the course of that, monthly hour-long conversations over the course of that 2.5 years, was that there was quite a disparity in the number of words spoken between the 3 different children and the 3 different sort of socioeconomic status of those families and those children. So this, you can go ahead and hit them all, and I think maybe we'll just talk about all of them at once. So they measured the number of words that were heard. And you can see child 1, child 2, and child 3. Professional family would be child 3, working class child 2, and child 1 would be the welfare families. And the number of words heard, the number of questions asked per hour in those settings, the number of affirmations to the number of prohibitions the children were hearing. It's really quite striking when you look at those numbers. And then the number of words in their vocabulary. And the children, their vocabularies very much reflected that of their parents. So what she did then, what Kate did is she really felt that that was really important information, and spent this time sort of writing, kind of looking for strategies to help close that gap. And so that's kind of how, you know, the strategies for the preschool settings happened. But what Hart and Risley really kind of came to the conclusion was that the research showed that there was a high correlation between vocabulary size and age 3 and language and test scores at age 9 and 10. So I know that we've talked about this numerous times about how children need to know that 10 to 12,000 words, and Jody bumps it up every time she talks to you, right?
Yes, she does.
No, we've kind of settled it now.
We started out at 4,000 words a year ago.
Right. So We did about 17 and a half hours of training this fall for all of our staff as a part of our, this being a Minnesota Reading Corps site, and that was all in Seeds of Early Literacy. And I was fortunate enough this last summer to go to the Train the Trainer for that, and so I can offer that in this region, which is one of the things that Steve had touched on, is the ways that we can help build quality across our whole region, not just in Jefferson Learning Center or our satellite sites, because in the end we could never serve all of the kids in this area. So it's just to our advantage when all of the workforce is aware of strategies that can make a difference in kids' lives. So.
And it wasn't just the staff at Jefferson
No.
that man trained. We did have all of our satellite site partners join us as well. And that's one of the things that we've really tried to do. Ann has gone through a couple of Train the Trainers. I've done a couple as well. We're trying to build that capacity locally so we can do that training locally, that we don't have to send people to the cities or wherever. We're really trying to do that locally.
And a lot of the trainings are so much more beneficial when you can mentor and coach along with them, and that just gets incredibly expensive if someone's coming out from the cities every time, or you would like to do it 2 hours at a time over the course of a month or something like that. So it really is beneficial for us to sort of build that.
So how do you get to 12,000 marks? What do you have to do as a parent?
Talk,
Read, talk, ask
interact.
questions.
All the time.
Okay. That's the key. Is that interaction between child and parent.
I think it's one of the strategies that they talk about in Seeds of Early Literacy is what's called a Strive for 5. And so it's a conversation exchange that would go back and forth as many as 5 times. And so that's something that all of our teachers are really being aware of and being cognizant to try and engage kids in a topic, and the ability to talk, to go back and forth that many times about it. And it's a difficult thing for some kids. Kids who haven't been asked questions, and now all of a sudden they're being asked questions, and what do they think about something, and maybe just had never been in that situation before, and that really does help build vocabulary.
From my experience, too, when I was working with some social, emotional development, early childhood, one of the things that Alexander's program was learning was that not all questions are equal. And so asking a child 10 questions and they're this high is not always positive, and you actually confuse the child, and it's actually detrimental. You're actually supposed to just say, this is red, rather than saying, what color is the train? And repeat after that in that way. So I just wanted to ask if you feel the same way, that we can't just start asking tons of questions to these small children.
I think it's the quality of the question, and then the quality of the exchange.
And I think that's the piece of it, is the conversation back and forth. It's not drilling them with questions, but to try and engage them in an actual conversation, and to make sure that the questions are somewhat open-ended so that you can have that conversation back and forth.
And that's part of the learning that staff received through this program as well, is how to have that engagement.
Yep. And there is kind of a whole section that our staff has gone through about how building, that there is a time when some questions that are maybe a little more direct are appropriate. When a child is learning a second language, when a child is, maybe younger, as opposed to the kind of different kind of question you can ask a child as they age or as they're more comfortable in the setting and so forth.
Great.
And I think the other piece that, we talk about the vocabulary and the words, but I think the other thing that's important in this graph is the affirmations versus prohibitions, as well as the positive comments they're hearing versus the negative comments. And you can see what takes place in different households and how important it is to stay on the positive side of dealing with children.
I just don't want parents trying to set a goal to ask their child 40 questions every hour.
No.
Well, yeah, exactly.
That's true.
That's what we're encouraging. If that's what we're saying works.
Yeah.
It's the conversation
Yeah.
back and forth, just is what we're encouraging.
Yep.
All right, anything else on that?
Nope, that's
Okay.
all.
Okay, the next thing that we are so excited about, because we've never really had a lot of data to share, and we have data to share, and we're very excited about it. And I do not have it color-coded on my sheet, but it is here. And for us, it's exciting. You guys may not think it's as exciting, but so what we had done, part of Reading Corps, is we did the IGDs, which is the individual growth and developmental indicators, and then also the Ames web, letter naming and letter sound. And as we go through here, we'll kind of talk you through this a little bit. So rhyming is one of the IGDs. And so on the left-hand side, it's rhyming fall, rhyming winter in non-reading core rooms. And then on the right-hand side, fall, winter, reading core rooms. And you will see the difference in some of those. And Ann, do you want to? You've done more with developing these graphs
So
than
green
I have.
is kids who have already reached a spring target. And so even in the fall, there are kids in some of our classrooms who've reached that. Yellow means they are on target to reach that spring goal. Red means some interventions could take place. Now in Minnesota Reading Corps, they would start the interventions with a slide we're going to show you in a minute called picture naming, and then they would move to letter names. Then after that, they would move to rhyming, alliteration, and then letter sounds would be the last of the targeted sort of interventions. So, so this is done in with a series of cards. The cards have one picture on the top, 3 pictures on the bottom. The child is only having to point to the one that rhymes. And always in Minnesota Reading Corps, we chose to do it that way so that we would have like information in all of our classrooms. It's fluency is an important aspect. So it is timed. So
When you say intervention could be done, I'm not hearing intervention is being done.
It is in the reading core room. So
Okay.
our reading core members are pulling groups of 3 to 5 children to do tier 2 and tier 3 interventions.
Okay.
So when they go through, they will look at the kids that are lowest and pull those kids out and do those interventions. They progress monitor every couple weeks, and once they've made enough gains, they move on to the next child.
Okay.
and because there's one of her,
Yes.
she can do 2 to 3 kids in maybe 3 groups. And so if we're heavy in the red, we might have to take the lowest first. Or we might take those that are in yellow and try and move them quickly to green. So then, there's a couple of different ways to do that. So this is the letter names. It is the winter scores for the non-reading core to reading core. There's a bit of a difference between the gains that were made there.
And so also what this is kind of telling us is some of the reading core rooms, obvious sites, show more gains than some of our non-reading core sites. And so really what Ann and I will be working a lot on this spring is with our non-reading core sites and really bumping up those tier one things in the classroom. Because it's not as easy to do the tier 3 or tier 2 or tier 3 without that reading core member in there. Yes, Pam?
The ones that are in reading core in the fall, those children, were they in reading core in prior years?
No. This is the first year we've ever done reading core at the preschool level.
Why is the fall one? Is that like right away, or is that after they've had instruction for a while?
It was by October 15th. I think the window was October 1st through October 12th.
So they've already had some instruction. So
Maybe.
that fall score indicates some of the instruction they've already had in the classroom.
And I should also state, these graphs are only children going to kindergarten next year. So our 3.5s are not a part of this. They are still measured, but because they have an additional year of programming, that we're not looking at them having to reach the spring target yet. So that also would, if you have 3.5s to 5, we're really only talking the 4 5s on these.
And there are
slides.
some of the reading core only come 2 days a week, so when we talk October 15th, that's only a handful of days too.
Yeah, in
And
some
then-
settings they've been there a lot. In some settings they've been there just a few times.
What was your student population? Is this 12 kids?
No.
No.
This is, I believe, 54 in the reading core and 44 in the non-reading core is what
Yeah,
I
think so.
believe. Mhm. So it's relatively close. The 2 groups are, they're not, certainly not.
How did you determine which kids were in the reading core group and which kids were in the
non-reading corps group?
We put them into classrooms because the reading corps member needs to stay in a consistent classroom. So what we did was they want us to do the 4-year-old. So obviously we picked our 4-year-old programmings right away. And then just the ease of having the reading corps member consistent, we did just the 2 classrooms. It's 2 classrooms with 3 sections. So she works with 2 different teachers. So they're really, besides just picking the oldest kids, that's kind of what we had done this year.
And then Jennifer's at Cardinal Kids, so those are the 20 children that she's dealing with.
Yeah. And then the other thing in the non-reading corps rooms, that also does include our satellite sites, so that includes the YMCA and the family child care as well.
So that's where you're getting your numbers?
Yep.
I'm like 90 kids. Okay.
Yep.
Picture naming is the one that's really exciting. They're going to be 100% by year end.
And that's an oral language skill, and that's one of those first benchmarks that we're looking for the kids to meet. So,
And that's one of the things we do, the repeated read aloud. In all of the rooms do it, but reading corps with more intention on the rapid automatic naming of
vocabulary words.